Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, along with other world leaders, has congratulated Donald Trump on his election victory.
Prime Minister.
Speaking in the House of Commons, he said he looked forward to working with the President-elect.
Mr. Speaker, can I begin by congratulating President-elect Trump on his historic election victory. As the closest of allies, the UK and US will continue to work together to protect our shared values of freedom and democracy. And having had dinner with President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago, I look forward to working with him in the years to come.
Meanwhile, the new British-Nigerian leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, used her first time at the dispatch box to welcome Mr. Trump back into power.
And so I would like to start by congratulating President-elect Trump on his impressive victory this morning. The Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary met him in September. Did the Foreign Secretary take that opportunity to apologise for making derogatory and scatological references, including, and I quote, "Trump is not only a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, he is also a profound threat to the international order. And if he did not apologise, will the Prime Minister do so now on his behalf?"
However, the polarising nature of Donald Trump means not everyone is happy. His victory has big consequences, not least for Ukraine and its defence against invading Russian forces.
President Zelensky got his congratulations out very quickly, but the big question is on Ukraine is, does Donald Trump intend to keep supplying Ukraine with weapons, and is he going to push for talks with Russia that frees the conflict where it is at the moment, even if it's too grand a notion to talk about peace? I don't think Europe can do enough on its own, and I'm including in that the UK, to give Ukraine security and deter Russia either from continuing the conflict at this point or from coming back at some future point.
Protests have erupted in Israel after Benjamin Netanyahu fired the country's defence minister Yoav Gallant. People took to the streets after Mr. Netanyahu said a crisis of trust led to his decision. Many protesters are calling for Mr. Netanyahu to resign. Gallant said his removal was due to a disagreement over giving concessions to Hamas to release the remaining hostages in Gaza. The cleanup operation is continuing in Spain as accusations grow over who is to blame for the flood response. Here, military and volunteers working in Payaporta, one of the worst affected regions. Recriminations are flying over who was to blame for the country's worst natural disaster in living memory. At least 218 people have lost their lives in the flooding so far. Protesters hurled mud and shouted insults at the country's King Felipe when he visited Payaporta 3 days ago. South Africa has closed one of its busiest border crossings with Mozambique following violent post-electoral protests in the country. The protests have led to deadly clashes in several cities following last month's disputed election. Lebombo, one of the 4 busiest land ports in South Africa, has been closed, with travellers advised to use alternative crossings. And a tradition several hundred years old has taken place on the streets of Ottery St Mary in England. Barrels coated in tar are set alight and carried on the backs of intrepid local volunteers. Known as barrelers' backs, the tradition is believed to have its origins in the 1605 gunpowder plot's failed attempts to assassinate James I. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.